just thinking about pain, but here I'm thinking about it as, not as a separate entity, but how it connects to other physical experiences. Because one of the things I guess that occurred to me a couple of days ago was that, a lot of pains, maybe even all pains, I don't know, are just kind of versions or extreme cases of sensations which happen anyway. You know what I mean? Like if I was to put my hand on a cooker, turned off, and then an electric cooker, and then turn it on, the first thing that would happen is I'd feel probably quite a pleasant sensation of warmth through my fingertips, and then as it warmed up, that warmth would get warmer, but I wouldn't call it pain, I would call it warmth, and then I would probably call it heat, and then somewhere beyond that point I'd start to use descriptive terms suggesting discomfort. I might say, well, it's a bit uncomfortable now, or that kind of thing, and then I'd probably call it pain. But it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be any different to the things that have been going on already. For example, it wouldn't just correlate with a sudden onset of damage to my skin cells. It doesn't correlate like that, does it? It's just not exactly an arbitrary point, but it's just a point on a continuum of warming up the skin of my hand, isn't it? And below that point, it's not called pain; it's called something else. And the same thing is true of lots of other stuff. I mean, this is psychophysics actually. I got thinking about this because there was a post on a blog I subscribed to by a guy called John Newlin, art and teaching blog, and he was talking about psychophysics. And psychophysics is a measure of that kind of thing. It has a different kind of a history, but recent psychophysics tends to focus on thresholds of human experience. So psychophysics would look at the most dilute. The most dilute a substance can be in water and still be able to taste it. And I think if I'm right from looking at this blog post, it was something like 1 teaspoon of sugar in 2 gallons of water. Below that you don't taste it, and above that, obviously you do. But that kind of a threshold, or it might be a threshold to do with illumination, a candle seen in a dark night from a distance of 2 miles, or anything really. The lowest sound you can hear, lowest in terms of volume, but also lowest in terms of pitch. Anything really, any sensation, any of the sensory capacities that we have, obviously all fall within a range, and psychophysics is the measuring of the thresholds in which that range operates. And I think the same is kind of true of pain. Kind of. Yeah, I mean, just to return to this psychophysics thing just for a sec, there's one example of a psychophysics description in that which I really liked, because usually when psychophysics describes these thresholds, these moments at which something is available to consciousness, it'll usually use completely scientific description, and then give a real world example, like the spoonful of sugar in the 2 gallons of water thing. But one of those in this blog posting was to do with touch. And the example it gave of a minimal touch was, let me get this right, a bee's wing falling onto a human cheek from a distance of 1 centimetre. I thought that was just really great. Any less than that you don't feel it. And any heavier object than that you do feel it, or whatever. So anyway, just to return to pain, it seems to me that the pain is a threshold like that. There's a point in all of these scales. The example I gave was heat, but there's other scales as well. Illumination, you look into a nice bright sky and it's fantastic, it makes you feel great. Then the sun gets a bit too bright, so you put your sunglasses on. If you haven't got any sunglasses, you squint. And if you're looking directly at the sun, it starts to get a bit unpleasant, doesn't it? Even with closed eyelids, it sometimes gets unpleasant. If you've seen the film Sunshine, then you turn the illumination way up, then it definitely gets uncomfortable, then painful, then destructive. And the same is true for sound. Sound is great. You listen to a piece of music and you turn your volume up, yeah, this is really great now. But you turned up too much and it's like, oh my god, that hurts. So it's a point on that continuum of psychophysical engagement, I guess. I mean, with psychophysics, what they tend to do is they plot the average, the average point at which a candle flame becomes visible. And then they do maximals or minimals on that, because of course everybody's not average, everybody's slightly different, and those parameters kind of describe the window that we look out at the world through. But the same thing is true of pain. You know, pain is a point on that continuum. It's a threshold beyond which an embodied sensation becomes a painful bodied sensation. And again, that's going to vary from person to person, isn't it? You know, so there'll be an average at which you hold your hand on the hot plate and you've got to take it off because it's got painful. And then there'll be maximals and minimals. Some people will be able to take the pain longer, or some people just take the sensation longer before they would acknowledge it being pain, and some people are much less. I think I read somewhere that some people who have versions of autism feel light to be quite painful at quite low levels, and sound. If sound gets above a certain level, it gets painful far long before it would be painful for anybody else. And you can also train for those things. I think, you know, you can train to push the threshold of pain up and down a bit, can't you? You know, you can sensitize yourself so that you experience things more painfully. I mean, the romantic poets were kind of into all that kind of thing, you know. It was all terribly romantic, too romantic for my taste, but they kind of encouraged the development of a sensibility, a sensitivity to the world, in which they felt the world much more painfully than perhaps others did, and you know, patted each other on the back a bit too readily for my taste. But conversely, you know, you can train yourself to push that boundary up a bit. I'm thinking about those famous pictures of Buddhist monks during the Vietnam War, pouring petrol at themselves on Tiananmen Square and just going up in flames, and apparently sitting relatively calmly, presumably because they'd pushed the threshold at which pain was experienced as pain quite a bit higher, or maybe something else, I don't know. But also, you know, processes that all the militaries in the world use on their recruits, you know, toughening up processes, I guess you would call them, or brutalizing processes if you're a bit more critical. Processes in which, you know, young men are routinely exposed to discomfort, so that their norms are kind of recalibrated, and what was once a painful sensation now is just fairly average, and the rest of their sensibilities are all sort of squashed a bit further down as a result, possibly. Yeah. It doesn't mean pain doesn't exist, of course. That's not where I'm going with this at all. It's just it exists, I think, like other psychophysical phenomena, like the ability to see and hear and smell and all that kind of stuff. It's a variable demarcation point on those scales, isn't it? I'll just finish by looking at this little pastoral sea, the River Fowl down there on a rainy day. Nice though, isn't it?